In session 1, we found out that we have a lot of deals that add more harm than benefit to society. In session 2 then, we discussed a policy to address this negative externality, namely a tax per unit of output, i.e. a tax per deal. How did that work? Well, let's put this into the graphs that you're familiar with. On the horizontal axis we have the number of deals, and they are ordered in a certain manner, namely we start with the sellers with the lowest cost and we order them by their cost level. So at the right, on the right we have actually sellers with high seller costs. Now, and we do something similar with the demanders. So the MB curve is basically the benefits, the buyer value, as it says on the information sheet, for each demander, and we order them from high to low. Right? So that's how an actual market works, and also in your case. Now, the trouble in round 2 was that we had this actionality, this negative actionality from production, which was it's actually a flat curve, because it's $20 in damage to society for every deal made. So this is this marginal external cost. So the marginal social costs are higher than the marginal private costs, right? And they are higher by the value of the externalities. They are $20 higher than the private cost. So for example, if you would be a seller with a seller cost of 20, then the marginal social costs are actually 40, 20 plus 20. All right, so, and then we have a lot of deals being made that add more harm than benefit to society. And which deals are those? Well, those beyond Q star. Q star is where the marginal social costs are equal to the marginal benefits, and those are deals with low buyer value and high supplier costs. So it would be ideal if we get rid of those deals. We are not going to get rid of those deals by way of a private solution, right? Because that's what we just concluded. So instead, we're going to have a tax per deal. And the tax per deal is exactly equal to the marginal external cost of each deal, i.e. it is exactly $20. Now, with this tax per deal, the suppliers face a higher cost per deal, right? Not only their seller cost, but they also have to pay the $20 per deal to the government. Now, and the result is exactly what we would like to achieve, namely that this tax kills trades that add little surplus. So we are perfectly willing to give this surplus up to get rid of this negative externality. So we go down from 47 deals in round 2 of session 1, so free market with negative externality, to 27 deals only in session 2. So we killed 20 deals, and those 20 deals actually added less than 20 to society. So as a result, we get a cleaner society where nobody loses out. And why does nobody lose out? Well, because we get $20 in terms of government revenues, tax revenues, but then we actually equally distribute those revenues among all the participants. And since we get $20 for every deal, what we distribute is exactly equal to what you suffer. So every deal adds $20 in terms of pollution damage, but the government gets in $20 and distributes that equally to everybody. So basically, the pollution damage is zero. It makes sense to do this equally because the pollution damage, air pollution, damages everybody equally, at least in the assumptions that we are working now in the experiment. Alright, so this all looks wonderful, right? So are we actually better off with a tax than without a tax? Well, then actually we'll have to compare the utility of our members of society, i.e. you, between the results of round 2 in session 1 and session 2. Before we can do that we have to make two assumptions. First is that everything can be put in monetary terms. Well, that has been taken care of, right, already, because we exactly know the cost, the dollar cost of the actionality. But another very important assumption is that we are willing to assume that a dollar is worth the same to everyone. So a gain of $1 to someone is equal to the loss of $1 to someone, right? So then we can really compare cost and benefits. If we are willing to make this assumption, and this is something that is not trivial, and I will get back to this in the last week of the course when discussing cost-benefit analysis, but then we can compare the welfare under the two regimes, free market versus tax, and then we see that indeed welfare goes up. Welfare being the sum of surplus net of pollution damage for all of the members of our society, of all 124 of you who participated in session 2. And then we see that welfare does go up, so we have a tax, but it makes things better. So the lesson from econometrics, the lesson from microeconomics 2 compared to microeconomics 1 is that in some cases taxes make us better off. Because in microeconomics 1 you learned, okay, taxes may distort market outcomes. In microeconomics 2 you learn that may be exactly what you want. You may want to distort market outcomes, namely when there is a market failure, such as a negative externality. We want to kill trades, right? We want to reduce economic activity. And that increases welfare. Now, an alternative way of reaching the same better outcome, which is actually not a per-deal improvement, right? Because some of you actually suffered from the tax. And some individual participants of the market were worse off. So it's not a per-deal improvement. Under the two assumptions that I mentioned earlier, the welfare levels go up, and an alternative way of achieving the same thing is by way of a subsidy. Now, how would such a subsidy work in this case? Let's put it differently. So how would a subsidy then help to kill trades with high sale costs and low buyer value? Think about it. Basically, we would have a subsidy of $20 per deal. So we say we have a $20 subsidy for any supplier willing to take it. So a supplier actually has the choice either to make a deal or to apply for the subsidy. Why would the supplier actually want a subsidy? Well, if you can make less than 20 from the deal, then you go for the subsidy, right? So, i.e., that achieves the same thing, and so we don't want deals that add less than 20. Now, we actually had a vote on the pollution tax as well at the end of session 2, and that's interesting because we know from theory that a tax may improve market outcomes, and now we went through the whole deal, but you see that there was no majority for a tax, so there was a clear no thanks, and that shows that okay, as a society we may be better off, and not only certain individuals but all of you guys, right? Because you were compensated for the pollution damage. So if you made no deal, then you did not suffer either. Whereas in round 2 of session 1, if you made no deal, you did suffer because you suffered the air pollution, right? You were not compensated for the air pollution. In session 2, you were compensated for the air pollution. Still, a majority said no thanks.